Hey everyone, I'm Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Flamerion. Technology at its best, Flamerion consists of a molten lava core contained in a self-regenerating capsule designed to hold the heat without melting. The fire in the core is managed and employed through a system of weapons that make Flamerion a killing machine. And so here we have the newest and latest monster to have the artifact trait, and this one is an attacker. But before that, you should know that as of the time recording this video, there's only a total of 30 metal legendary monsters, and so I'm going to be comparing Flamerion to those monsters. Starting things off with power, Flamerion boasts a power of 3,542, which actually places him in 3rd place in the metal category. He's actually tied for 3rd place with a lot of monsters like Hercule, Draza, Metalhead, Superdan, and General Holzer, so there's quite a tough competition in the metal category. And actually, as for the stat itself, 3542, this is actually the 2nd highest in the metal category. It just so happens that Annihilator R2 and Octex, they're currently the strongest monsters with a power of 3575. Moving on over to life, this monster has a life of 29,255, which actually places him in 13th place along with ML1 Yamato. So rather average life for a metal monster. And then lastly we have speed. This monster has a speed of 3,432, which actually places him in 11th place along with the VIP monster Uther the Valiant. And what's actually interesting about this speed is that even though he's in 11th place, the speed stat itself, 3432, is actually the 4th highest in the metal category. It just so happens that there's quite a few monsters that have the 3465 speed, and quite a couple that also have the 3476 and 3454. So the speed stat itself is great, just in the metal category, there's so many fast monsters. And still, with that being said, what makes this monster truly amazing is his trait. He has Artifact. Artifacts are not alive, immune to all status effects. What does this mean? This means that it doesn't matter that he's not the fastest metal monster out there, because he can't be immobilized. You can't stun him, you can't possess him. In the metal category, I'm sorry Hackster, you can't hack him. And don't even get me started with DOTs. You can't burn this monster, you can't daze this monster, you can't even magnetize this monster, you can't do anything to Flamerion, because he's immune to status effects. Now of course the opposite is true too. You can't buff him, you can't give him double damage, you can't give him increased accuracy, you can't give him life regeneration. But hey, I think that's a pretty good trade-off, because if you run this monster for offense, no matter what monster the enemy has on defense, whether it be a Hackster, whether it be a Metalhead, you know you're going to get a guaranteed hit in. The only way to immobilize Flamerion would be with cooldowns activated, which in the metal category is totally valid because Timerion exists, or with stamina drain. And in the metal category, there's definitely quite a few monsters that have stamina drain. M2 Wyvern comes to mind, Arcade comes to mind, he has like a 70% stamina drain, but that doesn't matter because if those monsters were on defense, I don't think they'd realistically run 3 speed runes. So as far as being a metal monster, you're kinda safe from stamina drain, you only really need to worry about cooldowns activated. And so just look at this monster, he's incredibly powerful, his life is rather average, but because this monster has Artifact, because you can't apply a DOT, because you have to kill this monster by pure damage output, if you were to give this monster like a life rune, a high level life rune, he becomes a huge threat because you're always guaranteed an attack. I just love this about this monster. But anyways, enough about that, let's move on to the skills. His ultimate attack is called First Law Transgression, deals massive fire damage to all enemies, may burn, ignite, and bleed all targets. What the heck is this ultimate attack? So it deals 70 fire-based damage to all of the enemy monsters, it applies burning, that's minus 15% of their life for the next 3 turns, it applies bleeding, that's minus 10% of their HP for the next 3 turns, and a minus 20% damage reduction, and it applies ignition, that's minus 20% of the enemy's life for the next 2 turns. Together, ignition, burning, bleeding, this is a combined total of 45% HP loss on the first turn, which means a total 90% HP loss on the 2nd turn, and then on the 3rd turn, burning and bleeding takes care of the rest. This is insane. If you were to start the game off with First Law Transgression, any enemy monster that wasn't immune to burning and bleeding, no one's immune to ignition. But anyone that's not immune to burning and bleeding, they would die by the 2nd turn, because don't forget you deal an initial 70 damage, especially combined with this monster's strength, combined with the strength rune, the monsters are dead. If you can like stamina drain, get your ultimate, do First Law Transgression, the enemies are dead. It's such an easy win. This ultimate attack is insane. The fact that it applies 3 DOTs, and this ultimate attack alone is an argument to running this monster on defense. Even though Timerion exists, even though Timerion can do cooldowns activated and stop you from doing most of your attacks, honestly, I don't think this monster has any 0 cooldown skill. If you get your ultimate, yeah sure, the DOTs won't land on Timerion, but on the other 2 monsters, oh they are gonna get it. Ignition, burn, bleeding, this is phenomenal. And so just to show you really quickly, skills group 1, we have a 1 turn cooldown, 1 turn cooldown, 2 turn cooldown, so nothing to protect you against an enemy Timerion. So we're going to move on over to skills group 2. And the first thing we start off with is cooldown self reset. All skills in cooldown become active and gains 1 extra turn requires cooldown. So here we have a self skill, which means you're immune to possession. Oh wait, you don't need to be immune to possession, you have Artifact. Anyways, 40 stamina costs, a 6 turn cooldown which is extremely high, and I'm assuming if you do cooldown self reset, this doesn't reset because you're just using it. But anyways, you reset all of your cooldowns and you get an extra turn. Now what I want everyone to pay attention is the stamina cost of 40 stamina cost, okay? This skill is definitely runnable and we'll come back to it in a little bit. Next up we have high temperature, deals heavy fire damage, may make target bleed and burn, requires cooldown. Now right here it says that this deals 30 fire based damage to single enemy monster, 45 stamina cost, pretty high, 2 turn cooldown, applies burning and bleeding, which together will drain 25% of the enemy's HP and at the same time reduce their damage output by 20%. Now it says heavy fire damage and then it says 30. So I don't know if in-game it's different. If any of you guys have this monster, if any of you know, please let me know in the comments below. As of right now, I really do like this skill actually, just because it doesn't deal that much damage, but it applies 2 DOTs, burning and bleeding, which means in a huge number of situations, you're going to be able to utilize the fact that a monster's turn gets skipped in the turn order when a monster dies with a DOT. So what's cool about high temperature, if it really is 30 damage, instead of just straight out one-shotting the enemy monster, maybe you damage them enough to the point where they're gonna die because of burning and bleeding, and let's say in the turn order it was Flamerion, the enemy monster, then the enemy monster, well you can do high temperature on the enemy monster that's going first, it dies with a DOT, and then the following enemy's monster's turn will get skipped, and then it goes over to your other monster, so that can be a pretty good strategy, and so that's an argument to why you may want to consider running high temperature, but again this really depends on whether this actually is 30 damage or not 30 damage, and then you'd have to really plan out the battle. You'd have to calculate how much damage you would actually deal before doing it, because you wouldn't want to deal too little damage to where the monster doesn't die with a DOT, because then you'd have just a really weak attack. Next up we have Fire Hack, deals heavy fire damage to all enemies, may make them very weak against fire, requires cooldown. So here we have an attack that deals 40 damage to all of the enemy monsters, 40 fire based damage I should say, it costs 55 stamina with a 3 turn cooldown. Once again, look at that stamina cost, 55. Anyhow, this applies sticky lava to all of the enemy monsters. So, I know what you're thinking, Fire Hack, cooldown self reset, Fire Hack again. The problem is you can't do that. 55 and 55, that's 110, and then cooldown reset, that's 40, that's 150 stamina. It doesn't work, you can't pull off this nifty little combo unless you had like the energized trait, or unless you had a stamina rune, and do not put a stamina rune on this monster. The one thing you could do is potentially do a team stamina rune on your treachery monster, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just go with team speed, team stamina, I really wouldn't recommend it, because even if you do Fire Hack on turn 1, yeah, you deal 40 fire based damage, the enemies have sticky lava. On the next turn you'll be able to do cooldown self reset and Fire Hack again, so then this will essentially be like a 72 AoE, so 112 AoE in 2 turns, that's nice. But then you are relying on 2 90% accuracy skills, and I don't know, that just seems like too much to do, you know, to run a team stamina rune just to be able to use Fire Hack back to back. I don't really like that. It's definitely feasible if you want to do it, totally go for it, but personally I'm not going to be recommending that. And as far as just running Fire Hack in general, I think it's just a great skill. You know, it could also be a setup skill for your other attackers. So if you have a Deny monster, you have Flamerion, and then you have a fire attacker, hey, you're pretty much guaranteed to win in that turn order. You know, your Deny monster denies, Flamerion does a nice damage output and applies sticky lava, and then your fire monster takes care of the rest. So that can definitely totally work. And on to skills group 3 we go. We have another AoE skill, Max Burn. Deals heavy special damage to all enemies, may burn all targets, requires cooldown. So a special based AoE that deals 40 damage, costs 45 stamina with a 3 turn cooldown, but this one also applies burning. And so if you only had to decide between one of the AoEs, I'm kind of leaning more towards Max Burn, just because it's special based, so if you were to fight a fire monster, it's not going to deal 50% less damage, and because it applies burning, and you could actually pull off the combo of cooldown self reset and Max Burn. You know, Max Burn is 45 stamina, cooldown self reset, that would put you at 85 stamina, and then another 45 stamina, that's 130, so you can do this combo, and you would essentially be doing what is equivalent to an 80 damage AoE, as well as a burning, so that's pretty awesome. And then of course you don't even need to run cooldown self reset, you can just run Fire Hack and Max Burn, start the game off with Max Burn because it applies burning, on the next turn Fire Hack, that is also 80 damage AoE, but now the enemy monsters would have burning and sticky lava, so you don't need to waste all of your stamina just to do 80 damage. This is of course if you're not fighting fire monsters, so there's 2 different ways to do it, run both of the AoEs or run cooldown self reset and Max Burn. Totally up to you, you can do whatever you want with this monster. The next skill we have is called Max Damage. This skill deals insane fire damage, requires cooldown. This targets a single enemy dealing 80 fire based damage, costs 50 stamina, 3 turn cooldown. Now this is actually what I would do in my personal recommendation if I had Flamerion. I would run Max Damage and cooldown self reset, and my combo would be to do Max Damage, kill one enemy monster. Like I already mentioned, I can't be denied, I can't be immobilized, so I'm guaranteed to get my max damage in. On the next turn, I can do cooldown self reset, so that would have already used up 90 stamina, and then I'll be able to use max damage again, which uses up my last 50 stamina, and so I used up all of my stamina, but I'm guaranteed to kill 2 enemy monsters. I mean, assuming I don't miss, of course. Single hits have a 95% accuracy, but that's my personal recommendation, that's what I would do. A monster with this much power and 80 damage, this deals a lot of damage. I calculated that if you were to give this monster 2 level 6 strength runes, you would deal almost 27k damage. Now the only problem is that in the metal category, there's only about 8 monsters that have less than 27k life, so you'd only be able to one-hit 1/4 of the metal monsters, and how many of those monsters are even used, right? Well, I mean, at least you know you can one-hit Flamerion, so as long as you can immobilize Flamerion before he does cooldowns activated, you're guaranteed to one-hit Flamerion with just level 6 runes. But that's just counting the damage that Flamerion deals on himself. You gotta keep in mind that you also have a deny monster that's probably gonna deal an initial maybe 2k to 4k damage, which then makes it feasible for Flamerion to kill just about any monster. I also calculated that if you give this monster a 7 instead of a 6, so a 6 and a 7, then his damage output actually increases to 29,000. So then max damage will deal 29k damage to any metal monster. So all you gotta do is increase the rune level by 1, just one of them, not both of them. So at that point, when you're running a level 6 and a 7 rune, he can kill 16 metal monsters, so that's a lot better. That's 50% of metal monsters. And once again, this is without any AoE, this is without your other monsters dealing damage. This is just Flamerion by himself with no buffs. So I think that's pretty amazing, and if you're able to give him 2 level 7 runes, well at that point he's dealing 30k damage. That's enough to kill 20 of the metal legendary monsters, and then everyone else is just within his grasp. The most HP a metal monster has, not counting Tankerion and Hercule who are the tankiest, is 31,969. So when Flamerion is dealing 30k by himself, again, when you add in that damage from the deny monster, from the AoE, from your third monster, that's enough to one-hit anyone. So I think for most players, just giving them a 6 and a 7, you're going to be solid, you're going to be good. So that's my personal recommendation. Run max damage, run cooldown self reset, and pretty much run whatever you want. And of course I'll get into what I would actually run. But yeah, max damage is it's just incredible. Next up we have max flamethrower. May burn, ignite, and make all targets bleed requires cooldown. So actually this isn't an AoE anymore. It'd be insane if it was an AoE. It's actually just a single enemy, and it costs 65 stamina, which is ridiculous, 4 turn cooldown, and you give burning, bleeding, ignition to one enemy monster. Once again, that's 45% of their HP. Oh my gosh, I am so conflicted about this skill. I hate it because it deals no initial damage, and I love it because of the DOT. Now, if you were to give Flamerion 2 strength runes, running max flamethrower kind of feels like a waste, you know? You have 2 strength runes, you have a high power, and then you're just going to apply DOTs to the enemy monster. Why the heck would you want to do that? Well, I'll tell you why. It goes back to what I was saying with the previous skill, high temperature. There's going to be several times when you can utilize the whole fact that you can skip a monster turn order when they die with the DOT. And so that would just be my main argument. I don't know how many of you have ever had this happen, where it's your monster turn, then the enemy monster turn, then the enemy monster turn, and the enemy monster you want to attack for them to die with the DOT, all of your attacks just kill them. Or maybe the DOT damage doesn't quite kill them, maybe they're going to be left with 100 HP, 1000 HP, 10 HP, 2 HP, and you're like, oh my gosh, if you would just die with the DOT, the next monster would get skipped and then I could win the game easily. And that's happened to me several times where it's just like, if only the DOT would deal a little more damage, if only it was 16% instead of 15%, I could easily win this battle. Well, that's the cool thing about max flamethrower. You can apply the ignition, the bleeding, the burning, you deal no initial damage, so then in those situations you're easily going to be able to manipulate the turn order. I also really hate the stamina cost 65, but I think that is a valid reason why you might want to run max flamethrower. But if you're doing 65 and max damage, that's already 115. Which means at that point you really can't do anything. If that's 115 stamina, you have what, 35 to play with? No, 25 to play with? Max burn is 45, fire hack is 55, high temperature is 45, cooldown self reset. Not even skills group 1, you only have 35 to play with. So I hate max flamethrower, but I also love it for those potential situations when I can utilize it. And I'm really conflicted. I know for sure I want to run max damage, cooldown self reset, and max burn. And as for the last skill, I was thinking about max flamethrower, but that stamina cost, it really bugs me. And so I might actually consider high temperature. But once again, my combo with this monster would be just cooldown self reset and max damage, and that would be solid. And for runes on this monster, I would go 2 strength runes and a speed rune, or 2 strength runes and a team speed. Once again, speed not mattering too much on this monster because you can't be immobilized. So you're free to really play around. You can also give him a life, a strength, and a speed, because since he can't be immobilized, because you can't apply DOTs, he would just be a monster that survives a long time and is able to deal a nice amount of damage out. And then as far as for putting this monster on defense, you're free to play around with the runes. For skills, I would go high temperature, fire hack, max burn, and max flamethrower, just so all of your skills can do something to the enemy monster. But once again, you're still susceptible to Flamerion, but that's kind of fine because you still have your ultimate to rely on, which will occur 5% of the time, or apparently 10% of the time in PvPs. I didn't know that, I think that's new. And so yeah, with all that being said, that is going to conclude my analysis on Flamerion. Personally, I really like him just for the fact that he's a single monster killer. You know, in the course of 2 turns, he eliminates 2 enemy monsters. I'm cool with that, I'm fine with that. But now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about Flamerion? What do you guys think about these new artifact monsters? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Don't you just wish that there were non-metal artifact monsters? That'd be nice. But I don't know, the future is bright. There's so much that can happen. So best of luck to all of you on your Monster Legend adventures. I really want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on Flamerion? And like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.